Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Getting your groove. Coming off the Easter hangover, family hangover. Hope everyone's well. Thanks for joining me. Today, we are talking about home prices and specifically how they are going through the roof for Barbara Corcoran. So that's what we're going to dig into today. I'm going to get rid of this music here and kind of go over that. So, it's hard to believe that the prices can go even higher the way they are currently. But according to a very interesting article and a video, which I'm going to share snippets of today, Barbara Corcoran goes on record saying that she definitely thinks that prices are going to go through the roof if certain things happen. And that's what I want to discuss and talk about today on what happens if that happens with the sellers. How does that impact buyers, and how will buyers react, and how buyers are coming up with money for the down payment, and some different phenomenon that are happening that we're seeing across the country on what buyers are doing to be creative and coming up with this money for the down payment. So, but before we do that, I'm going to reach over, way over to the middle of the country to bring in a very special guest to join me to have this conversation all the way from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm bringing on my friend, David Matney.
Hey, Jen, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be part of your program.
I got the cheering. I totally botched the whole cheering thing. There we go. Better late than never. Better late than never. Oh, I messed that
Thanks
up.
a lot, Jen. It's great to be on your program.
Oh, I appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much for the invite.
Sounds so formal. No, I appreciate you jumping in. And, we met, we met last year at Vid Summit and conference. And I've been wanting to get online with you and chat. And I'm very, very interested to hear what's going on over in Nebraska. I'm, as you know, in Massachusetts. I'm over on the East Coast. So, just different points of view, I think, help people and,
Exactly.
shed some light. So, how are things over in Omaha
Things are
for
doing real
Peyton
well.
Manning, right? You can get that joke a lot.
And we're seeing the same thing that you're seeing, where prices are going up, and we're a little bit different in the fact that our prices are a little bit lower to start with, but we're still seeing prices go up. Even though rates have gone up so much, you're still seeing prices go up. So
Now, are you guys above or below? Are you below the median sale price?
We're below the median for Douglas and Sarpy County, which Omaha's in Douglas County. But our median sale price for Douglas and Sarpy County, and this is including new construction, is right around 320,000.
Wow. Okay. So this is going to be interesting conversation because I'm up East Coast, our median, and I'm down on the South Shore, south of Boston. So I'm actually, my prices are even a little bit lower than what the Boston area would be. We're still right around just under 600.
Wow.
So it's going to be an interesting conversation. So I want to dive right in, if that's cool with you, and I'm going to play a clip that I grabbed off of Fox News. Fox Business. They interviewed Barbara Corcoran, and one thing I like about Barbara is she doesn't get swayed by any interviewer or whatnot. She sticks to what she knows. Yes. So I'm going to bring up this short clip, and then we'll discuss.
Explain that to people.
I can't explain the rates going up or down. That's not my bailiwick. But what I can explain is if rates go down just another percentage point, that's what I'm hoping for by year end, prices are going to go through the roof. And the reason for that
would be around 6%, get to that level.
Because everyone will come out and buy. There are probably 10 buyers on the sidelines waiting for interest rates to come down that are actually active in the market. So everybody's going to charge the market. And so if you wait for interest rates to come down by another point, I don't think you'll gain. I think you'll wind up paying more, because I wouldn't be surprised if real estate went up by another 8 or 10% if interest rates come down another full point. I know it sounds crazy, but there's a magic number that makes people get all juicy about.
Yeah.
And it just has to slide down there for everybody to say, let's get out there and take advantage of it.
There was a story in one of...
So super interesting. super interesting, and it totally makes sense, right?
It does.
It totally makes sense in terms of what her philosophy is. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that in terms of where things are at with the market, and the fact that there's a ton of buyers. A lot of people think, oh gosh, the because of the rates they've given up, or because of affordability they've given up, and they haven't. They're just sitting on the sidelines,
Right.
right? And
Right, yep.
with these interest rates, I mean, there are a lot of people. You probably saw the same thing at the second half, the last quarter of last year. People pulled back, and they're just kind of sitting back.
Right.
And when you have a flood of buyers coming in, it's supply and demand, right? You have too many buyers to buy one house. Well, then that's when things go to you have buyers that say, no, I'm going to give you 5,000 over. No, I'm going to give you 10,000 over. I'm going to give you 5,000. And then that's the step off point for the next house that goes on the market in the neighborhood. And it just goes and goes and goes. So, it's very interesting. The question is when, but what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there with all the folks that think that just because prices have gone up so much that they have to come back down. And that's just simply not the case. It's supply and demand. We're still below in our market, inventory wise, below 2019. And that was a crazy market.
Wow.
And, the pandemic, of course, was just extremely crazy. But, it's gotten so unaffordable. But there's still a segment out there that are buying, and they're willing to pony up. And they're coming up with a lot of creative ways in order to get that offer across the finish line.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've heard the same thing with just how far can the market go, right? And
Right.
when is the point where it's gone too far or far enough? And when I talk to a client about that, I always tell them, like, well, how much did your grandparents pay for their house?
Yeah.
How much your parents pay for their house? And it's like, at that point in time, we'll never go back to those days. And even 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago, that where the house, where the market was at that time, even at the when the market crashed in 06, 07,
Right.
08. And I don't know how many times. I mean, I got in the business in 1996, so I
Right.
survived that apocalypse of a market. It was bonkers. And I'll never forget, people were saying like, when that tipped, when the scales tipped on the market crash at that point,
Right.
a lot of people were like, oh, it's the price. It was never the price, right? It was all financial. It was all financial driven within the banks and appraisals and people getting money that they shouldn't have gotten, and all this backdoor stuff. Nothing to do with prices. But people were because of the way that the mortgage market collapsed, people were in houses that they couldn't afford, which led to short sales and foreclosures.
Right.
And that led to the prices coming down because people were they were stuck, and they had to get out from underneath these houses. And a lot of people at that time said, oh my gosh, these prices were so overinflated, because they were at that point. They'll never be this high again. I'll never get that value again. I'll never recoup the money. It'll never get as high as it was in 2001. Yeah. And then there was 2020. So, I mean, we surpassed those levels. I think we were surpassed those levels in 2020, I believe. But the reality of it is it hit a point. It did adjust.
Right.
But over the course of a 50-year period, the average appreciation is 4.5%. It goes up, it goes adjustment. It goes up, it goes adjustment. It goes up, but that peak is always higher than the last peak.
Right. Well, and even during the great financial crisis in our market, there's a kind of a saying that goes in Omaha: we don't get invited to the party, so we don't get the hangover. Our market, we had a lot of inventory. We had 6,000 homes on the market, which is a ton for our marketplace. But even prices took a little bit of a hit, but not a lot. It just took longer to sell a home. If you sold a home in 30 days, you were a rock star.
Wow.
And there was a lot of expired and canceled listings. But and that's how I made my money back then, was off of expired and canceled listings, because they would go through 2 or 3 agents before, saying, okay, hey, we got to price it right. Okay. And there's a lot of folks where it's like, hey, how much money do you have to bring, do you have money to bring to the closing table? And if they didn't, then they became landlords. And
Right.
then, but believe it or not, in 2019, just to kind of show you where our market is, there's a builder in our market called Celebrity Homes. And you could buy a brand new split entry home, 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage in 2019 for $190,000.
Wow.
Okay. That same home, they're a volume builder. Okay. Kind of like the Omaha version of D.R. Horton.
Okay.
And you get a few changes. It's not like D.R. Horton where you get and you don't throw a fit. They make you a few changes, but that very same home is now $310,000. And so we get people relocating from, the East Coast or West Coast, and then they can come into our market and buy new construction for $300,000. They're thrilled about that.
Of course. I mean, who wouldn't be, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, they'd be even more thrilled if they could go back in time and buy one.
you
for
and me both,
you
you and me both, my friend. If I knew then what I know now,
Yeah.
I would have a much bigger real estate portfolio. I will tell you
Exactly.
that. But you make,
You can't go back.
you can't go back, and you make the best decisions that you can make. You make the best decisions for the moment that you're in
Exactly.
with what you have to work with at the time.
Right.
And that's when I always tell people, like, you don't second guess whether you made, a long-term, good decision. It's okay. Is it going to be what is affordable now, meet your needs now? I mean, yes, you don't want to buy a 2-bedroom condo if your grand plan is to adopt, Great Danes or something. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make sense. But, in terms of like pricing, to say, oh gosh, I wish I got this a little bit bigger, a little bit nicer. It's like, you made the best decision at the time,
right,
with what you had to work with. Uh-oh, David, you're frozen.
Oh, did I freeze up there?
You did.
Okay.
You did. Do they have internet? You got good internet access out in Omaha? What's
I'm
going
in my
on out
office,
there?
which we have good internet. We
Maybe that's why the houses are so cheap. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no internet. There's no good. It's the dark ages for internet.
Well, people do think that they think of Omaha, they think we're in the sticks, and they'd be surprised we actually have a pretty good sized city. The entire metro area is about 1 million people, just under 1 million. But
that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, I'm glad you're back. We didn't lose you indefinitely. That's a good thing. I wanted to play this other clip that was another portion of that interview with Barbara Corcoran that I thought was interesting. So let's just let's see here. Cue this up.
Your recent comments, you said that the cost of selling homes will likely go down, but that doesn't mean that the price of those homes will go down.
No.
Distinguish.
No, it's very different. A lot of people are predicting house prices will come down because the seller will pay less of a commission and take that difference and give it to the buyer. Sellers aren't made that way. When the seller lists a home, they want the most money they can get. So they're going to take any savings and put it in their pocket. The cost of housing, I believe, will go up because it has been going up. It's been going up for the last 5 years, despite the dire state of the shortage of houses. So house prices have gone up 6% this year alone. But the real deal is there's not enough houses to go around. There's probably 5 buyers for every house out there.
Is that right?
Oh, definitely. And that's
so you don't think there's a come up?
So she brought in. There's a couple different things to unpack there. Right. So the first thing is, well, what she was talking about, and I love the Fox News, like down the bottom, scary time for real estate agents. And just to be clear, she did not say that once in that entire interview.
Right.
Okay. That she didn't insinuate that. She just said there's a lot of changes and there's a lot of in terms of the lawsuit and the commission, situation. Which I don't want to get into with this video. Is plenty of there's so many videos out there, so many live streams on the commission situation that will work itself out for sure. But the thing that I wanted to touch on in that first part of that video was that the reason why a lot of people think that that prices will come down Not only because of the first thing that we were just talking about in terms of like, they think the prices are, overinflated and they can't go any higher and all the things, but it's on the heels of this National Association of Realtor DOJ lawsuit that they think that with the commission decoupling, whereas the sellers could potentially be paying less of a commission, will automatically mean that the sale prices will be lower. And as the sale prices are lower, that'll bring everything down, make it a little bit more affordable, which is so erroneous and so untrue because, David, if you were going to the store and you saw an item that was on sale, but you were trying to go to the store to sell something, okay, and you were like, oh, I have this thing, but it costs me XYZ, $5 less to get it. Would you lower your price by $5, or would you pocket the $5?
No,
No, you pocket the $5. Every red-blooded seller in this country, if you said to them, okay, Mr. Seller, you're going to sell your house for $100,000, but instead of a 5% or 6%, 6,000, percent commission, $5,000 or $6,000 commission, you only have to pay me $3,000 or $2,500. Would you reduce your price by $3,000? The seller's going to say, well, what's the market value? The market value is $100,000. So the commission has no bearing on market value whatsoever. To determine the value of a house, which is, as professional real estate agents, that's what we do. We determine what the value is of the house based on comparable properties. It's a whole research process that we go through, right? That has zero impact. It's like, the seller who has the house is worth $300,000. And one seller has a $250,000 mortgage, and one has a $150,000 mortgage. The $250,000 mortgage seller says, oh, I need to get every penny, so I need to raise my price. That's not how it works. The buyer's going to pay what market value. The buyer's not going to pay more, because the seller owes more. Just like, so so the seller's not going to take less just because they don't have to pay out extra fees. So that whole thing is
another way
so erroneous.
Well, another way of looking at it is, let's say you inherited a property. Your cost basis is zero. You're not going to say, well, I inherited this property, I'm going to knock off 10 grand. You're going to try to sell it for market value, period. And it doesn't matter what you pay for it. It matters what it's worth. And it's what it's worth on the open market. And so when people say, oh, prices will come down because maybe there might be commission compression, I mean, most for sale by owners, if let's say we're talking about that $100,000, they're going to be like, well, I think mine's worth 107.
Well, and that's a great point. That's a great point, because for sale by owners is a perfect example. That's a perfect example in the sense of value. I mean, you see a for sale by owner reducing their price because they're selling it themselves? No. They're doing it because they want to save the money and have, I mean, why would there be for sale by owners if you say, oh, I can buy it for $97,000, or sell it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Well, it doesn't make any sense. So
I had a rental property that I sold a couple months back, and in order to get the most amount of money, I listed it in order to get the most amount of exposure. Because I'm just like any other seller. I want the most amount of money that the market will bear. And I'm going to get that I could sell it on my own. I don't need, I know the process. Okay, I could sell it on my own. But in order for me to get the most amount of money, it pays to list it in order to get the most exposure.
Well, and that's the thing is that for sale by owners, that's why for sale by owners historically, it takes up like less than 5% of the market. Right? Because of the fact that it's not just hiring a real estate agent, because there are a lot of sellers that have done this time after time and time. They know how the process works. Maybe they were past real estate agents. They know how to navigate. Maybe they've got some negotiation, experience. But if you're not actively in the market, knowing how to actually market the property and have active connections to other agents, not just putting an MLS, but actually having those connections to reach out to those agents, having an open door so the agents can call you And I mean, I don't know how many times I've had a buyer say, "Hey, Jen, I want to see this property, but it's a for sale by owner." I call the for sale by owner, and that
Right.
they don't call me back for half a day. You know what I'm saying? Like if that if you're talking to agent, that doesn't, that's not the assumption is it's going to be within, an hour, 2 hours. You get that immediate feedback, but it's the exposure. The other thing too, I was going to mention about, in terms of the value, and I used to work with representing banks on foreclosures, and I'm seeing like a lot of talk about foreclosures coming back, and and all this kind of
Right.
stuff. I haven't seen it in my market, but
No.
the thing about foreclosures, which has always been a hot button, and I represented banks. I know what happens on both sides. I've helped buy foreclosed properties. And for those watching, like a foreclosed property, the way it works is, if you default on your mortgage, you don't pay your mortgage. They start that foreclosure process. They auction. They get to the point where it's a point of no return, where they can't stop the process. They auction it. If nobody buys it at auction, the bank takes it back and they own the property. And now they're in the banking industry. They're not in the property management business. They want to get rid of it. So now they hire a real estate agent, which is what I did for a couple of years. And they bring that agent in to look for buyers. And in my experience, when they would call me, the process of trying to figure out what that value is worth, to be honest, like, they're not just trying to cover their loss.
Right.
They want to make as much money as they can.
They're
So
just like
you have
any other seller.
They're like any other seller. So you have a property that has a market value of 300,000, and on the books the seller maybe owed 200,000, 250,000. They're not going to sell it for 250,000. If they think they can get it for 300,
Right.
they're going to sell it for 300. There's no savings.
Right.
So I think that there's this market value, this conversation of how market value is obtained, that needs to happen in the real estate community to convey to the consumer, to say, hey, this is how this is going to work, and this is how commissions fit into the mix, and how it's not going to work the way you think it is. Not only that, but it's going to hurt the buyers,
Right.
which is the whole nother conundrum that in an already unaffordable marketplace for the buyers.
Right. And
So-
I think the other thing to kind of tag along with that, and that is, a few years ago when we had such a crazy seller's market, I would tell my buyers, hey, let's look for a for sale by owner, because instead of competing with 10 offers, we might only be competing with 2 offers.
That is
So
very
we would
true.
actually get a better value. I've sold a couple for sale by owners because they were willing to pay a buyer's agent because they seen value in somebody bringing a buyer. But my buyer would get an inspection, and they were thrilled to pay the list price, because if it was on the open market, they would be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more. So we would get a better deal looking for sale by owner.
I would
Where-
that's a great strategy, David. That's actually a
so-
great strategy in the sense that these sellers that you're approaching, right? They're for sale by owner. They have zero representation. You have zero responsibility to represent them.
Right.
So you're going in, and because like you said, that it's we've seen it over the last 4 years. We've seen the fact that the cause and effect of having a mass number of buyers, this is what has pushed these prices up. When you have 50 buyers coming through the door, I had an open house. Oh my gosh, 2 years ago, I had 2 hours each day, 4 hours total, 160 people, 160
Wow.
groups of people, 160,
Wow.
80
That's
each day. Was bonkers. And I had them sign in with a QR code. So that's
Yeah.
legit numbers, right? That's
Yeah.
not a made up, that's legit number.
Right.
I couldn't believe it. I went home. I said, no wonder I'm so tired. But the thing is that created an effect. The effect was there's a lot of people here. So I
Right.
better put an offer in, and I better put in a really good offer.
Right.
They didn't, a buyer going into a house by themselves versus a buyer going into a house either knowing, hearing, or seeing 5 other buyers.
Right.
Psychologically,
Oh.
that's like what a seller wants. You want that traffic through the door. You want that buzz, because that's going to that's going to trigger that emotional response of, oh gosh, if we really, really like this house, let's step it up because we don't want to lose it.
Right. And we all knew when rates were so low, we all knew that party was eventually going to end.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of getting, 160 people through, you're still getting a bunch of people through, and you're still getting multiple offers. You're not getting, 10, 12, 15 offers, but you're still seeing, at least in our market, 2 or 3 offers.
Yeah.
And that's still driving up that price. And,
and the thing is that the other thing too is that I just want to address is that there's a lot of discussion about, with the Crash Bros on YouTube that, how can people afford this? And yes, there was a report, and actually I can pull up the article in terms of like how much more money a buyer's going to need, a first time home buyer is going to need to get their foot in the door. And it is, I have a 22-year-old that is graduating college, that is going out into the world. And, my heart aches thinking about the challenge that she's going to have trying to buy a house. Well, it's and her mom and this is no money bags here. No money bags, right? So, I will help her as much as I can, but the reality of it is it is incredibly hard. However, the other side, there is another side, and that other side is there's a lot of people with a lot of money. There's a lot of people that are selling that have no mortgages, that are taking that equity and buying cash, big down payments, and those people, the interest rates don't matter to them. It doesn't matter. That's why this market keeps going.
Yeah, I had that a few years back. I had somebody that the kids were buying a house, and then their dad stepped in and wrote a $100,000 earnest deposit.
Wowza.
And
you know what? This is a good, go ahead with your story.
And I'm just kind of like, that's one you don't want to leave on the, earnest, you make a copy of the earnest deposit on the copier machine. I was like, $100,000 earnest deposit, and it was only a $200,000. It was only a $200,000 house, and they had a $100,000 earnest deposit.
Holy mackerel.
And, but that house today would be about $350,000, $400,000.
What a great investment. What a great investment.
But the folks that don't have, how do these young, and I think you see that in the statistics, the average first-time home buyer is 36 year or 35 year last year. So you're seeing buyers move that, people are getting married later in life, and they're buying homes later in life too. Yep. And you're just seeing that change in demographics versus, 30 years ago or 20 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I bought my first place, in 96, 97.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I got in the real estate business in 96, and, a young kid, was 23 years old, youngest one to enter the company, and I've been doing this my whole adult life. And I was renting an apartment, and I'm like, wow, if I'm a real estate agent, I should probably own a house. So, but I was like 24. I was 24, and you don't see that anymore. Well, you just don't see it. They don't have the,
When I bought my first house, and you're going to get ready for this price, $10,000. And it was an investment property. I was living at home, and I bought an investment property, and it was at 13.5% interest. And I was mowing yards and working at a hospital, and I'm going to college. And it was my principal, interest, taxes, and insurance was a combined of $135.
Okay, so people watching this,
$400.
Okay, so David, people watching this after the replay here, they all just threw up. So that's great. Thanks so much for that story.
I didn't mean to do that.
You're like,
I didn't mean to do. And when prices were $30,000, I'm kind of like, ooh. The first one I bought to live in was $30,000, and I'm kind of like, my payment was $335, and I'm kind of.
But it's all relative.
Ooh,
but it's all relative, because I'll tell you, my first place back then was a condo, okay, with my at the time husband, and it was $80,000, okay,
right,
and doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're coming from an apartment paying, I think I was paying like $300, $400 a month rent.
Right.
And that doubled. At the time, it was scary. It was
Oh.
very, very applicable. Like, it's not just because it's not $80,000 compared to today's,
Right.
situation, today's, income, today's everything. It's like at the time,
Right.
it was all we could afford, and it was
Right.
scary. So the scariness factor is not any less back then. The relationship between the income and the mortgage payments have definitely changed, But I want to bring up this article we were talking about earlier about these NEPO buyers, which is very interesting. This was a Fortune article I came across. And it's called NEPO housing market. More than a third of Gen Xers and millennials expect their parents to help with a down payment, survey finds. Goes on to say that everybody needs a little help sometime. And in this housing market, people need their parents' help. More than a third of millennials and Gen Xers who are planning to buy a home expect their parents or family to help with their down payment in the form of a cash gift, according to a Redfin commissioned study. And it goes on to say, if not cash, younger generations are looking to buy, dipping into their inheritance to fund the down payment and so forth. And it says, because the housing costs have soared so much, many young adults with family money get help from mom and dad,
Right.
even when they have jobs and earn a perfectly respectable income. Last year, Redfin conducted a survey of recent movers, found that 38% of
Wow.
more than 500 buyers under the age of 30 used a cash gift from a family member or an
Yeah.
inheritance for their down payment. Redfin's Fairweather called them the NEPO buyers, a play on words, clearly drawing on nepotism. So forget NEPO babies, we've got NEPO buyers. So this is like, this is how they're getting by. I mean, getting a cash gift from a family member is not new.
Right.
And to be perfectly honest, I mean, that's, when I was reading this, I was remembering when I, again, bought my first place.
Yep.
I bought, grandma kicked in
Right.
some money, not a lot, just enough to get us to that, combined with what we had to get us to that 3.5% down payment mark, right?
Yep.
But getting a gift is not new, but the thing is they're getting gifts of much more significant
Right.
value.
Right.
And I think there was that all I was in this article? I think there was, let's see, there was another thing that I wanted to share here. I think that was it actually. So yeah, it's just because they're looking at, because the other piece of the puzzle is these Gen Xers are, they're not the Gen Xers, but the millennials. They're much, much more money conscious
They are.
and money aware and money
Right.
savvy than the Gen Xers, my generation, right? Which is one of the
Yeah.
reasons why Gen Xers, we're kind of we're in a rut where a lot of us are like, not save enough for retirement and all the stuff, and who knows if Social Security will even be there when it's time to retire.
Yeah.
But they are not that way, and they do save. But the thing is they're not. Their mindset is much different in the sense that they're not looking to get to that 3.5%, like like I did. They're looking to get to that 20% to get rid of the PMI,
Right.
which is very interesting. So
Well, and they're a lot more savvy because they just have more resources. Like how many folks YouTube things nowadays versus so they can learn the process.
yep.
And what's amazing. I don't know about your analytics on your channel, but what's amazing is to watch the analytics. It tracks who the buyers are, and it's like I have very few between 18 to 24, but from 24 to 35, that is the bulk of my audience.
Yeah, no, the same. Like, I would say probably between 25 and 45
Yeah,
for me.
I mean,
For,
and
that's, but I
that's
think that speaks for all of YouTube. I feel like that's not,
Right.
obviously some channels will attract different types of audiences. Like
Right.
Mr. Beast is not attracting my generation. Like, it's just not the way it works, right? Like, I'll be like, oh, that's cool. Next. And then my teenagers are like, oh my God, I'll just see the thing. I'm like, no, I have way more important things like how to pay my mortgage that I want to spend 15 minutes on that and not a Mr. Beast video. You know what I mean? But it's true. Like, in terms of like, you literally have all of this financial savvy information
Right.
on how to. I mean, I dig into that on my channel, and I to try to educate, in terms of like, how to build your generational wealth,
Right.
and how to buy a house and then not sell it to buy the next, but turn it into a rental, and then now you've got long-term wealth, as that gets paid down and so forth. That's an investment, and now you have this, and the rent covers the mortgage, and you move on. That would never have been something that I would have thought about or even ventured to get into. That was only like, investors did that. I'm not an investor. That's an investor.
Yeah.
But now it's amazing to see, this generation come in and do these things. I had a client actually many years ago, probably about 6 years ago, that bought a two-family, right? And it was a little older home.
Right.
Did some updates. Ultimately there was a side by side, so they ended up condominiumizing it.
Yeah.
And they literally, so now they put in new utilities, and the guy, the homeowners, they're both of them engineers, and so they thought this all through, put in utilities, all the nine yards, went and talked to attorney, had it condominiumized with condo docs and all the things, and then they took this property and they rented out for a while. They rented one side, lived in the other,
Right.
renovated the one they were living in,
Right.
moved out, saved money,
Yeah.
moved out, bought a down payment on another house, finished the condo conversion, sold each unit,
Yeah.
made a bucket of money.
Right.
Made a bucket of money because they literally doubled, because they went from a single two-family home to two condominiums in high demand, and it was smart. It was I said, oh, I wish I had thought of that.
And I think a younger person that rents an Airbnb, they're more exposed to it, to where they're thinking, hey, maybe that's something I should do. I think you're going to find, I mean, I'm glad I'm the age I am, because starting out now is so much harder than it was 25 years ago, for those folks. And if they get in behind the power curve with college debt, and then they don't get that good job coming out of college, then they're already so far behind. I really feel for those folks. My parents were investors, so that's what spurred my interest into investing. That's how I got started. I thought, well, why do I want to have an agent find the house? I'm finding the house. I'll just get my license. And then lo and behold, I got addicted to it and had so much fun selling that it's like, okay, then I quit investing.
Right.
I bought a couple, but I think for folks that, they got to get educated on it, and I think more and more folks are. But the folks that start off behind the power curve, it's just going to be the rich get richer type of scenario, unfortunately, because not everybody's going to have rich parents that can come in and compete. Some of those poor kids that, if they're doing it on their own and they're just struggling to meet the 2 years ago. I mean, some buyers of mine was, we made 8 to 10 offers before we got one accepted.
Yeah.
And they really did. They fell in love with let's say the second house or the first house, and so they really didn't get what they wanted.
Right.
And so there's remorse, and then they weren't able to do the home. A lot of times, they had to waive home inspections and all that. So, the good thing now is, it's not that market to where you can do a home inspection.
No, there's a lot of opportunities, and I think that this is like a common term that I just keep repeating and reminding even people in our industry that are just panicked over this lawsuit. Which, quite honestly, I don't think there's any need to be panicked. I think it's really just it's pretty straightforward. It's just educating the consumer so that the consumer knows what their choices are and why they're doing what they're doing. And yes, if you put the choice of the buyer's commission, the buyer agent fee, in the lap of the buyer, it is, some buyers are just not going to be able to do that. But that being said, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah,
Necessity is the mother of invention, and the reality of it is, and I've seen this play out many times over and over, over the last 28 years,
right.
that whenever there's a need, and we're already starting to see it, right? USDA loans have come back, right? Zero down payments have
Right.
come back. These things that were not necessarily a need, that kind of disappeared for a while, we need them, so they're going to come back. And I
Right.
think that it's just on the seller side, understanding why the market's doing what it's doing, and
Right.
what do they need to do to put themselves in the most advantageous position
Right.
to walk away with the most amount of money. And if that most amount of money means paying a buyer agent fee, then that's what you should do, depending on what your market is, right?
Right.
If it means, compensating, cooperating, then that's what you're going to do. If a buyer says, well, I can do this, maybe maybe they see a FSBO,
Right.
but the FSBO who doesn't know what they're doing and maybe doesn't know how to price it,
Right.
occasionally, like historically, for sale by owner, for those watching, FSBO is for sale by owner.
Mhm.
Historically, for sale by owners, for the most part, not all the time, but
Right.
for the most part, they leave money on the table.
Right.
It's just the nature of the beast. For sale by owners that don't maybe know how to negotiate, like all the things that we were talking about earlier, and all these things, that they're not going to get the traffic, which means they're not going to get as many offers, which means the price won't go up as high. However, there is a portion of them that maybe, like I have a property, a homeowner now that we're getting ready to put their property in the market in about a month, and we're literally watching week by week to see what's happening in their neighborhood.
Right.
And I keep adjusting the suggested list price, because
Right.
all of a sudden that neighborhood is becoming hot. So we're
Right.
moving, but a for sale by owner may not be aware of that, may not be up to date on that. They may not know that a house down the street that was $50,000 more, which this just happened, sold. But guess what? The reason why it was $50,000 more was because it was being sold furnished. So, having all these things, but occasionally you do have a seller that, for sale by owner, that prices it, below market value.
Right.
And, the buyer, leveraging that opportunity, may say, hey, I'm willing to pay that buyer agent commission,
Right.
build it into the mortgage even, if it means I can get representation to buy this thing, because it'll make up in the long run, because I'm getting a house that otherwise would cost me a lot more if it
Right.
was left on the open market. But I think, you're going to see a lot of opportunities come. I mean, I remember, not to say, back in the olden days, I remember, well, back in the olden days, I remember in 2005, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a mortage.
That's right.
No
And
joke. If it, you
remember
literally
those
like,
days,
you
you never wrote an FHA offer back then. It was
no.
those days. If you wrote an FHA offer, it was like, what is that? Upfront
It was
mortgage
scary.
insurance
It was
premium. What is that?
it was the wild, wild west. It was very, very strange. I mean, literally, buyers would walk in. And you probably remember this. Buyers would walk in and they'd be like, your name, yep, social security number, yep. How much money do you make? I make this. Okay. How much mortgage do you want? This. Okay. Here's your letter. Off they went. It's like wild, wild west. But the thing is in money was like money was being held at. It was like,
and I get it. You want to incentivize home ownership, but you got to have it incentivize the folks that can actually afford to pay the loan back.
Well, and that's why it's right now, and what separates now versus then, right, is it is incredibly challenging to get a mortgage.
Right.
I'm closing on a HELOC. I'm thinking about doing solar at my house, and I'm like, might as well do it now. Okay, it's a HELOC, so the rate floats.
Right.
And I owe less than 50% of the mortgage, right? Okay, so of the value, so, and the amount of money that I'm asking for only brings me up to like 65%
Right.
of the total value.
Yeah.
Okay. If I don't pay, they put a lien on the house.
Right.
Like there's no risk to the bank, but
Right.
it still has taken almost 6 weeks.
And you got to jump through a lot more hoops
And you
nowadays.
have to jump through the hoop. And it's like, they check everything. Now I'm self-employed, so it makes it a
Yes.
little bit different. And I
Right.
got to do P&Ls and all the
Right.
stuff. But even if I was a W-2, it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
They have all these checks and balances now.
Right.
Even when it's a no-brainer, like you owe this and you want to take a little bit more to make improvements on your house. And if you don't make the payments, we can foreclose because that's your asset. That's
Yep.
your security on the loan. That's
Yep.
your guarantee to back the loan in case you don't pay. No brainer. Well, it doesn't matter. They
Right.
still check everything. And because of that, to your point, like I think that there will be these programs that were maybe lost that are brought back to help first-time home buyers. But the big thing that I'm hearing a lot is like, if you can't, like, if you're saving for down payment, if you're saving for closing costs, in that meantime, work on your credit.
Right.
Work on your credit.
Well, and then things have gone up so much where we have inflation to where it's just so expensive to buy groceries and everything. So it's hard for people to save.
My mother was she was ruminating. She was not happy, complaining yesterday about the cost of peanut butter eggs on Easter. Do you know how much this 6-pack of peanut butter eggs cost? It was almost $7. I said, she's like, back when you kids were little. I'm like, I know, Mom. I'm like, we're all adults now. You don't need to buy chocolate. You don't need to buy candy. We keep telling you that. But she's like, she says, we used to buy so much more. But it's like, but it's true.
Right.
I bought my, I'm my older daughter is away for, college. And so
Right.
just me and my 17-year-old. And I'm divorced now, so it's just the two of us. And
Right.
I still bought some candy because
Right.
it's an excuse to eat candy. So I got to get my white chocolate peanut butter eggs and
Yeah.
the Starburst jelly beans and you know what I mean. Like you're not gonna do that on a regular day, but it's like, oh, it's Easter and Halloween. Woohoo,
Right.
let's go. But I look
Yeah.
at the prices. I'm like, what?
Right. No, it's I think a young person now has to start planning so much earlier that it's just not like, okay, like it was even 5 years ago. They
Yep.
and we got so spoiled with interest rates for so long being so low, and then there was just like the shock of how high they went up and the effect on prices. Yeah, we're going to be years trying to unravel this
100%.
because you gotta, and then some markets now you're in a type of market where you can't there's not a lot of new construction out in your place, is there a lot of new construction?
No, not really. Not in my area. I mean, you're going to see I would say new construction like where you're at,
Right.
middle, central US, the southern states, it's, I think you'll see more of it, but like East Coast, West Coast, do we have some? Yes, we definitely have some. But the thing of it is the new construction that we have is, you're talking like either a one-off or smaller subdivisions where, to be
Right.
perfectly honest, the builder just wants to make as much money. I mean, it's the American way. It's just the way.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
if you can build a small house and make X amount of dollars, or build a big house on the same lot and make a lot more money,
Right.
build a big house. So
Right.
that's not, they're not McMansions, but they're not first time home buyer houses either.
Well, I was
So-
told in our marketplace that it takes, just to get the lot to where it's buildable, you're looking at least $100,000
Wow.
just to where it's buildable. So you can't
Wow.
have a person go out there and build something and they have to make money.
Well, and I think that speaks to like to kind of bring it back to the beginning of, the title of the video in terms of
Yep.
the prices going, through the roof, all the things that we talked about, plus
Right.
the fact that, availability of inventory, right? That's a main reason why prices are not going to tank.
Right.
Again, if we use the 2006, crash as a stepping off point, because, it's the closest thing to a catastrophe that we can refer back to, that, to say that we're, just to compare differences on. But when we were at that point, at when the market started to turn, there was a flood of inventory. There was too much. Builders had built big subdivisions. They couldn't find buyers because the buyers all of a sudden they're like oh my gosh, these payments are too high, and started pulling back, and then the whole thing went down like a house of cards.
Right.
Fast forward till now, and the builders are just not building. Two things, right? The builders aren't building the way they were. They're not building spec houses. They're not building as fast because of cost of materials, availability of labor. But the second thing is the millennial generation that's coming in, that's bigger than Gen X and boomers combined, right? They weren't buying back in 2006.
Right.
They are now.
Right.
And these I say kids, like compared to me, they're kids, but you know what I mean? Like they're coming in, and it's like they're, I'm not going to sing, but it's like a wrecking ball. I'm not going to say it isn't like a wrecking ball, but that's about as close as I get. But it's like, what I'm saying, like, it's a 1-2 punch. You've got pullback of inventory and an increase of buyers. I feel like Iron Man doing that.
Yep.
But you know what I'm saying? And that is a major contributor, and why Barbara Corcoran was mentioning it in her interview, that is going to protect the prices on home sellers to it's just going to continue to creep. What I want, though, I want, David, more than anything, though, is I don't want it to be like 21, 22. And I think that buyers have pulled back enough that it's not going to be like that. I think it's going to get into like a more like 4%, 4.5%. That's a nice, you know what I'm saying? Get into the nice groove, and things are kind of, instead of these crazy appreciation prices.
Yeah, now would you agree with this? Because of the great financial crisis, and we had builders in our local market go out of business, that left an impact on them to where they were very hesitant to overbuild. And so they pulled back on building, and they're like, we're not getting caught with that again. And then lo and behold, then rates, went down so low. And then you had the lumber mills stopping production. And then, it was kind of a perfect storm of, you had demographics where you had buyers reach that buying age. You had the pandemic where, we had shutdowns and everything. And then you had, builders, we haven't built enough homes in the past decade. I mean, we had kind of like a perfect storm of bad things if you're a buyer.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then you had, and people were, to be honest, flush with cash because the government was putting money, buckets loads of money, into people's pockets. People were collecting unemployment, and the money was coming in, but they weren't traveling to a job.
Right. And
you know what I'm saying? There was so many, to try to keep people afloat, which wasn't a bad thing, but it was like it was just a recipe for long-term disaster, right?
And now we really have a problem when you have these tent cities popping up. Where even, where you have these folks that in different markets, we're starting to, for a long time, we've never seen anything like that here in Omaha, because housing was affordable. But the folks on the real low end of the spectrum, that are now living in tents, and it's like, gosh, those folks, I mean, this is so many problems.
What we need
together. I don't know how, I don't know how a person starts to fix it.
Well, I think it starts with the government. I think the government has to loosen regulations for builders, period. They have to loosen regulations, and then they also have to incentivize them to build affordable housing. Okay? Right. Get back to during the 80s, when you saw condominium buildings pop up, right? The 90s. We need more of those. Those are great first-time home buyers. I mean, granted, a lot of these, there's a lot of first-time, home buyers, and they're like, I don't want to start off as a condo. But yeah, you get your foot in the door.
Right.
You get your foot in the door, and it's better than living in a tent. It's better than living in,
it's a starting point.
It's a starting point.
You just got to get into the cycle somehow. You got
to get in the cycle so you can start building that equity.
I'm working on a video right now where the government's getting involved, and there's a nonprofit, and what they're doing, but they just can't do it to scale. But it's a new construction, 2-bed, 2-bath, 1-car garage for.
Nope. Oh, you froze again. Uh-oh.
Then-
There you
did I
are.
lose
You coming back?
Okay, I'm back. Okay.
All right, cool.
We have we have some nonprofits doing some pretty creative things to where the government's helping out and the nonprofit, and they're going in and building a brand new construction for $180,000. It's for owner occupied only, but it's but there's not enough of those. You can't solve that one off.
Right.
You know, you got to do
Right.
that on scale somehow.
Yep.
Or they have to loosen up those regulations to say, hey, let's make lots a little bit smaller. Let's allow, get creative and things like that, and just get people into the cycle so they can advance.
Well, and give builders incentives.
Exactly.
Give builders incentives to do that instead of building the bigger houses. Also give laborers incentives.
Right.
There's so many kids that are graduating high school and they're going into college, and then they go to a college, 4-year college, and then they come home and they don't leave because they can't afford to, because maybe the job maybe they had 4 years of basket weaving or something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
it's it's an oversaturated, market, and there should be more incentives to say, okay, Mr. College grad, Mrs. College grad, are you interested in welding? Are you interested in, working with your hands? Are you interested in electrical? Are you interested in plumbing? We are going to subsidize your schooling. We're going to subsidize tools, a discount on tools or a rebate on tools or some sort of give these younger generations an incentive to get into the labor force, okay, to fill those seats. And now the builders will be able to have the laborers.
If you have more labor and more competition, that's going to drive down that labor cost.
And then they'll be able to do this. It's all these different pieces of the puzzle.
There's a lot of, and you have the folks on the left and the right not working together. And there's no compromise to get, there's going to be unhappy people on both sides. You got to compromise,
Yep. No, it is. And I think that, there was one of the, I just wanted to pull this up real quick, this slide about how young Americans are, how they're saving their money, which was interesting. Just wanted to share that real quick, that, it shows that, more than 1/3 of young Americans are using cash from family to fund down payments.
Wow.
But it's like, this is interesting to me. Save directly from the paycheck, 60%, David, 60% they're saving from the paycheck, 39% working a second job.
Right.
These younger generation, the young Gen Zs, the Gen Zs, millennials, they're not, like, they get a bad rap. These kids are not
they're
lazy.
Working hard.
They're
smart.
They are not lazy. They're hardworking. They are smart, and they're willing to make the sacrifices. They just have the deck stacked against them. And then number 3 was cash gift from a family. The thing that is frustrating is that if the amount that you're saving, if it does not exceed your interest rate savings, it cancels each other out.
Right. Yeah.
If your interest rate doesn't go down, if the interest rate goes up and it's going up at a faster rate than your savings rate, then you're literally, like, you're not gaining any ground. You may put, $1,000 or $500 in the bank a month, but you're not, like, it's actually not contributing, because you're going to need more money to buy that house. And as prices go up, if you can't, and that's, I always tell, of course it sounds like, oh, you're a real estate agent, you're going to always tell us now's a good time to buy, now's a good time to buy, a good time to sell. It's like, I always tell people, like, if you want to sell, my question is always, why?
Right.
Why do you want to sell, and where are you going to go? And if you want to buy, the answer is not, oh, it's a good time to buy. It's no, why do you want to buy? And what's your, what is your goal for buying a house? If your goal is to build financial wealth, then do it now. Because every day that goes by, is a day lost of building equity.
The best time to
Period.
buy a home was 20 years ago. The next best time is today.
Today,
You know?
it's the time is when you financially can afford it,
Right.
and your personal life when it makes sense. If you're in a situation, you're between jobs, or you're making, you're maybe looking to make a transfer or whatever, all those different multitude of personal decisions. But if all those ducks are, line up, and you can afford it,
Right.
you don't wait.
Well,
Don't
and
wait,
that's
because
the
you
key
won't be able
word
to
is
save fast enough.
and
You
that's the
know?
key word is afford it. And then that is, it goes back to just making sure that you don't, shoot yourself too far, too in the foot where you get so far in college debt, where it's like, okay, or make sure that that degree you're working for is going to be a good job when you get out,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's, uh,
And I would say that too with the seller in terms of preparation. Like if they're, if they're thinking about selling a house, if whoever, when you're watching this on the replay, if you're thinking about selling a house,
yeah,
then you look at, what is your personal situation? What's your timely situation? Where are you going to go next? Can you afford to do that? If the answer is, maybe, then the answer is no, don't sell, buckle down, and improve your property.
yeah, right,
Make updates, make repairs, fix it
Right.
up, paint it, because that will improve your value. And then when
Right.
you are ready, you'll be able to, you're actually going to be riding the wave, because not only is your property going to be worth more, but you've improved it, which has increased it even more. But
Right.
don't put yourself into a situation where you put it on the market and then you either can't find something to buy, or you put it on the market prematurely because you really couldn't afford to get into the next house. Sit tight and improve your property.
Right.
Work on the property, improve it, make updates, and that will put you in a better place when you are ready.
I had some folks a couple years ago that I pleaded with, I'm like, they hired me to sell the house, put it on the market, and when we sat down at the listing appointment, I, impressed upon them, make sure you're pre-approved for that next move and use a local lender, okay? And, of course, they decided to use an out of state lender, and I sold their home, and then they're stuck in an apartment. Meanwhile, they gave up that 3% interest rate, and now they're renting, and prices have gone up. So you got to make sure, if you're a seller, that next move, make sure that you don't mess around. And it's like, I feel bad for them, but it's like, you plead for folks, use a local lender, make sure that you have your plan lined up on the purchase side.
Yep.
And
Planning. There's
Yeah,
there's an old a proverb or something in there, and I don't know what it is. I can't think of it. I'll think about it. It'll be like in the 2 o'clock in the morning. It'll be like, that's what it is. Something about like planning 2 minutes will save you 10 in the future or something like
Yeah,
that. It's
I mean,
one of
yeah,
those things
it's-
deals. But it's I with my I don't know, OCD or ADD, whatever the heck is going on in my brain, that I'm a consummate planner. I'm always, everything is going to be like if we're getting ready to do something, it's 10 steps ahead, big picture. I have all these things so that if I'm doing this, it makes sense to do it at the time, whatever. And I used to drive my ex-husband crazy. And, and it's like, I want to be able to do that quick, it feels good to be like, oh, I'm just going to go do it. I was gonna, but the reality of it is you have those planning, those steps in place for a reason. And what it does is it's basically just about avoiding pain. That's all it is. It's all about just avoiding pain, the pain of making a mistake, pain of doing it too quickly and on a timeline that doesn't make sense. It gives you the opportunity to be like, think the whole thing through, even though it may not be perfect, you may not be able to know exactly what step, how long it's gonna take to sell the house, who's gonna buy it, how much exactly you're gonna get, where exactly you're gonna go. You don't know all the answers, but if you have a general idea laid out, then you won't find yourself in a situation where you're going, so
Yeah.
uh, the importance of planning and whatnot. And I will say on the heels of that,
Mhm.
little segue, I'm going to say to those watching, if you are in a situation where you're thinking about making a move, you're thinking about either selling or maybe need some help with buying, click the link down below. I have connections, David out in Omaha, but I have connections across the country. Over the last 28 years, I know,
Yep.
tons of great agents. So click the link down in the description. There's a simple form down there. Let me know what area you're looking in, and I will connect you with a great agent who will take great care of you. Hands down, great care of you. But David is the go-to guy in Omaha, Nebraska, and I would say that if anybody is looking out in the Omaha area, you wanna get connected to David Matney. For sure. So this is where they can get you, right? And you've got some links in there. People can check you out and get in touch with you if in Omaha and all the different surrounding areas. You'll take care of them.
Awesome. Terrific.
Right on.
Well, Jen, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been an enjoyable day, and
this has been fun.
This
has been super fun. Yeah. No, this has been super fun, and thank you everyone for hanging in and watching. And you know what? I think we should we dance it out on the way out? Because I like to do that.
I don't know if you want to.
Let's do this. We'll do this a little bit. Dave, come on, get loosen up a little bit. Have a little fun. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging in. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.